Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I've been following both on the radio and then on social media someone that I think we all know in the Greater Toronto area, Billie Holliday. And she is just a wonderful radio host and anchor and popular social media activist, and I thought it would be fun to check in with her. She's an award-winning radio host, a TV host, and a mom. She's hosted the popular Mad Dog and Billy Show, which aired in Toronto for 12 years on KISS 92.5, CHFI, and Virgin Radio Toronto. She was also the co-host of the Dean Blundell Show on Edge 102, and most recently, she's co-hosted the PJ and Billy Show on Country 106.7 in Kitchener for the last couple of years, which brought her to this area. She's got a passion for interviews and connecting to the audience, and she's traveled coast to coast on doing interviews at the Grammys, Billboard, MTV, Oscars, Red Carpet for 14 years. She's also hosted Sit Down with Billy on the Sound Source Radio Network, where she would do in-depth interviews with the biggest celebrities of our time that aired across the country. Billie Holliday, welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to have you. I know we're friends on Facebook, so it's nice to talk to you.
Exactly. And, I just, this past weekend, I saw that you were at a gorgeous cottage up in Muskoka, and I just see pictures nonstop of you. So tell me, how did you get involved in this business?
Well, I took TV and film production at Humber. Well, let's go back a bit. In high school, I used to volunteer at radio stations all the time. And I'd go to school during the day, and then I'd help out the overnight host, like during the week, which my mom didn't like, but I said, it'll pay off, Mom. And then I went to Humber for radio and TV production. And I had a friend there who lived beside me in residence named Roz Weston, who is a popular radio show host as well in Toronto. And he said, you should be in radio. So I was like, okay. And I switched to radio, and here I am. So there you go. That was many years ago, but did lots of volunteering in high school, and here I am.
And you've been in numerous different genres, pop, rock and roll, country. How does that happen? How do you become relevant and all these different genres?
It's tough. The only one I haven't done, I think, is like smooth jazz, which maybe will be my next thing. But I think that communication and radio is all about the communicating part. And I have a very wide range of musical tastes. I love anything from Diana Krall to, Tim McGraw to, and growing up around music and loving it so much and wanting to be in the business, you just sort of appreciate every artist, no matter what the genre and what they do and how they do it and their skill set. So, and I got an opportunity to interview tons of them. So just being at the different award shows as well, they were always from different genres. So it didn't really matter what station I was on, because I got the, in-depth from them about their music and their musical background. So it was kind of easy to sort of skip around, as you say. And as you know, in radio, you get you're like a team player, and then you're sent to another team, and then you're off to this team, sort of like being traded in the NFL or something without the pay.
So I do sort of long form radio interviews that are, talk radio in-depth interviews over the course of almost an hour with different individuals. My impression of you was that you did interviews, not maybe that long, but you did interviews of people, that you weren't just the person introducing, the next song. You were actually knowledgeable about the artists, and you like to meet them and you like to interview them. Is that true?
Yeah. So the red carpet stuff, like I covered the Grammys and the MTV Awards and all that fun stuff back in the day. And those were quick interviews. But for the radio Sound Source Network, I did sit down hour interviews with these celebrities, everyone from J-Lo to the Backstreet Boys to Elvis Costello to, Donald Trump, even, if you can believe it.
You interviewed Donald Trump? Really?
I did, back when he was doing the show, that TV show.
What was it called again? Apprentice.
Yes, thank you. I was like, I forgot. It's funny because you forget he was even.
Well, I probably shouldn't ask you, but I will. Did he come on to you?
He made some inappropriate comments. I'll just leave it at that. Like he was very rough around the edges. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So you could tell his true colors and you couldn't tell, foresee what was going to happen. Else we would have stopped it a long time ago, wouldn't we?
Yes. Well, you don't know. He was the one that said he could walk into Fifth Avenue and murder someone and no one would care. And who was it? That Billy Bush interview where he said celebrities get to do anything. Is that true? Do celebrities get to do anything?
Grab them by the blah, blah. When I started in this industry doing all the celebrity backstage stuff, because I also did a lot of backstage things. I also covered all the Grammy parties. So the after parties where there was lots of alcohol involved. There was a lot of inappropriate stuff going on back in those days. A lot of the celebrities would act inappropriately because you didn't have cameras and you didn't have like the recording devices, and the Me Too movement hadn't hit yet. And I think that, they were too big for their britches at that time. And
Yeah.
I think social media and the fact that everything is recorded now really kind of put everyone in their place. Well, not everyone, as we can see, but a lot of them. Like there was a lot of stuff that shouldn't have been said or done back then. Let's put it that way. And back then, I mean, 15 years ago, I'm not even talking 50 years ago, right? I think we've come a long way in 15 years.
Do you think it was the Me Too movement or was it something different?
I think it was, yeah, the Me Too movement for sure. I don't want to bring up names, but a famous Canadian journalist was up on some charges a while back. It was right before the Me Too movement. We kind of saw him go through that. And I think everyone sort of just started acting more correctly and, realizing it's a big deal, and that you have to respect people.
That's I don't know if you've seen it. I think it's called The Morning Show. That's a syndicated series on cable.
Yeah.
I found it really kind of interesting, and it was doing a good job of the juxtaposition of the females that were, completely aghast by what was going on, but then other people that were sort of part of the process, and I, and either even if it wasn't accepting, at least not objecting to what was going on.
Yeah, we've seen this in Toronto radio too, with a lot of the big ones falling because of comments and inappropriate behavior. And I've been around a lot of that in the industry, and that was very prevalent in radio years ago. You were sort of, as a woman, kind of just sort of a laugh track, and you were the person that would take all the sexual jokes, and you really were sort of the second name in any situation. I think we've come a long way. And
Billy.
Yeah, right. Well, it's funny because I do a show now called Billie and Friends. And I said, this is the first time I'm not a and Billy. I'm a Billy and, which feels kind of nice,
The world has changed.
The world's changing.
And it's country, is it not?
No, this one now, sorry, was that country here? And then I moved to this one, which is now, it's sort of hot AC again. And I'm a PD now too, as well, which is really fun. So I get to, kind of do, to train the staff in that way and have my own DJ roster and all that kind of fun stuff. I've never been a program director before, so this is a really interesting part of my career. I'm learning so much, and it's great to have my own show too and be able to do my own material and my own setup and plan and all of that. So I'm learning a lot, which is great.
And you moved to Waterloo, I understand?
I am in Waterloo, yeah, with my 14-year-old daughter. God help me. And my little dog. Yeah, we're doing good here. It was a big transition. I lived in Toronto. I guess I moved 3 years ago, and just right during COVID. So I started a new morning show here for Rogers during COVID, and we were the only people in the building, myself and my co-host. I took a contract to do that for a year and a half, and it was very interesting times during COVID to do this show in a new city with being a single mom with COVID happening everywhere. It's pretty wild times.
And, my memory of you was that you were fairly involved in the community in Toronto. Have you got involved in Waterloo community as well?
Yes. And I'm out Center Wellington as well. I mean, they deal with a lot of, we deal with a lot of mental health with children, which is I'm an advocate for, because my daughter suffers from anxiety and stuff like that. We've had a rough time with her at points, and now she's doing great. But I'm really a big advocate for just talking about that and discussing that at community events for sure.
Why?
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 Because it's important. Because it's funny because my daughter reminds me a lot of me, but I had no resources, and I also was embarrassed to talk about when I had anxiety or when I was depressed. And I think it's so important to get them involved with even with therapists. I mean, my daughter just started therapy. It's going really well, but these outlets are here for a reason. And our children are really suffering, especially after COVID. I noticed a big difference with my daughter and the way she was acting in a new school, and just going through being in isolation. The age, the awkwardness of that age. And I think it's really important to talk about, because I know that I would never go to my mom and go, I'm depressed, or I'm feeling really anxious when I get into a classroom, or I'm, feeling bullied, or whatever it was. So it's important, I think.
I think some of these kids that have gone through high school or, middle school, where they spent, 2 years, 3 years, almost 4 years, not in class or only partially in class, have really been negatively impacted. They've missed out on so much of what I enjoyed about, high school and elementary school and middle school, particularly, I think. I met someone just a week ago or so who just graduated, and they didn't have the school council, the cheerleading, the soccer, none of it for like 3 years.
Yeah, isn't that wild? And it really did affect them. I noticed a big change, and we had to act pretty quickly because I saw her just not being herself and just becoming more and more isolated and just always on her phone. That's another thing that's taken over our children's lives, of course, is this phone that you just can't pry out of their hand, and they don't learn how to deal with their emotions that way, right?
Yeah.
You're just texting and snapping and whatever the latest is, and you're also sitting there, and instead of going outside with your friends during COVID, you're comparing yourself to these girls on TikTok or, what they're wearing or how much money they have. And, all of that stuff is just mentally draining, I'm sure.
Well, I'm glad you're
Like back in
involved
my
in.
day, we just look at the glamorous magazines, like Vogue and go, I'll never be Cindy Crawford. But these kids are inundated with it. And it's all kids that are on these TikToks and stuff. So they're saying, why am I not, 7 feet tall and living in LA in a mansion and have a zillion followers? And it's all about how many likes they have and how many likes did that get and how many, it's all about that.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about this and how media has changed and how social media has changed media. But let's take a break for some messages and come back in just 2 minutes with Billie Holliday talking about her career, talking about media, talking about radio, talking about what's important to her and her daughter and her family. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be back in 2 minutes with Billie Holliday. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. It's a real pleasure of mine to be chatting tonight with Billie Holliday, someone who I listened to on the radio a lot when I was driving to work or this thing or that thing. 15 years ago, I think it was, that Virgin Radio with Mad Dog and you were on. And I think that's probably when I listened to you the most at that time, because frankly, I probably didn't listen to you, I have to be honest, when you were on country as much as I probably would have previously. Today, you're the host of Billie and Friends on the Grand 101. And can you get that here in Toronto?
You can't, but you can always get it on your app, right? On Canada Radio Player, Canadian Radio Player, any app that you have on your phone can get it. Yeah, I was just funny. I was talking to Mad Dog, who was my longtime co-host on the weekend because the Virgin anniversary came up of the day we launched Virgin, and we were just talking about how much the industry has changed. So it's nice that I've remained friends with him in the business. He's doing mornings in Montreal now too, as well. But we were just talking about the things that we used to say on the radio that we just cannot get away with these days at all. Like some of the stuff we were reading, like going back and forth, sending like old bits to each other, saying, "Yeah, this would not work." And it would not work. No.
So I wanted to ask you about that because you've done that. You've done country. You're in sort of regional market now, I guess I might call it. You've done morning shows. You've done TV. Lots of red carpet kind of stuff and other interviews. We were just talking about your daughter and Instagram and TikTok and things like that.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think has happened to media, and is there a future for AM radio, for FM radio?
It's something that we talk about all the time, like trying to get ahead of, the game and how we're going to fix radio. And it's sad, especially with AI coming in. There's big discussions about AI taking jobs from radio announcers, which is pretty sad. I mean, taking jobs from anyone, but particularly in our business, and how they're going to do that. And I think it was in Fort Lauderdale, where they actually have an AI midday host. And it's just a copy of another girl that works there, but they have her hosting the show. So pretty much taking the job away. So it's an amazing future, what's going to happen. But I think there's always going to be a place for local radio. I really do. Especially when everything goes out, radio is always there, right? And technology is not something to count on, but your radio is. So we just have to think of different ways to sell it. As you know, and this saddens me too. The radio schools now, like I think it was Conestoga, one of the radio programs is now content creation, not radio. So it's all encompassing and it doesn't just focus on the radio. A camp that my daughter just got back from, they used to have a little radio station there and all the kids would do a shift on the radio, which she loved. That's no longer there. Now they do content creating where they take out their phones and they walk around taking pictures and learn how to edit them. So
Muskoka Woods probably.
Yeah, that's right. We've got to figure out how to merge the two. And I think a lot of people have done that well. But one thing that we're finding as a morning show, our Facebook is a big tool for us. And that is no longer seen to our listeners. And in the morning, we have like anywhere from 150 to 200 comments usually in the morning. And we use it for this thing called morning tea, which is a big part of our show, which we discuss and go back and forth. Now, we no longer have had that for the last 2 weeks because no one can see it, of course.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm sure.
Yeah, no,
so we've got to fix that too.
I interviewed the publisher of Ottawa Life magazine, and he was saying that he thought that this bill, I think it's 21, the online media thing, was really negative and worst to local media and smaller and ethnic media.
Absolutely.
Because
It's really killing the small guys. It is.
it was meant to protect maybe the big guys. And he was saying these old big guys that weren't actually able to do things to get to online and make money and make revenue were the ones that objected to the federal government and got it passed. But it was the little guys that were being hurt the most. And he says that he was making money from Facebook and Google with his articles from Ottawa Life, and he was killed.
Already. Yeah, and a big amount of our audience uses Facebook daily and comes on to engage with us during our show. And now they think that we've just sort of abandoned them. And, it's like, do we start it over again? And then that gets taken down. And some of the bigger media companies I know saw this coming and then changed some certain coding so they still have their Facebook pages. But it's the small ones that don't have big IT departments that can't put get the right people on the phone or, do the right things or pay enough money to get this fixed. So I'm really hoping that gets cleared up because it's really hurting the smaller people for sure.
Well, I agree. And I think one of the problems is the only people that are being heard in Ottawa are the big newspapers and the big, the big TV channels, et cetera, that are the ones
that
were asking for it initially. And the government's not listening to the rest of us.
Yeah, that's right. Correct. So we were just had a meeting this morning with my boss. Do we start a new page and go through all that work? But where do our 10,000 followers, how it takes years to build that. Right. Yep. So where do they go? How do we get them? And then we do all this work and then they shut it down again. It's very confusing.
What do you think is going to happen? In Australia, was it Australia, New Zealand? I can't remember. The government gave up after a couple of weeks. But it doesn't appear that the federal government here is going to give up. And
that's what we were thinking. It would be done by about December, but we're hoping for that. But I don't know now. It just seems like they're really on it. So I'm hoping something happens quickly. So it's a big tool that we use. And if we're going to grow as a medium and stay relevant, we need things like Facebook. We need things like Instagram and ways to, communicate with our listeners.
And you also have an app that your show is broadcast on?
Yeah, just Radio Player Canada. And you can find the Grand 101. So, yeah.
So, I do my show on radio every night. And then as soon as it's done on radio, it's put on a podcast. And it's on like 6 different podcast services. And then on 4 different, social media video services, including YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. Do you think that makes sense, or is that too fragmented? What's your sense of, where is content going? Is it going everywhere, or does it make sense to keep it?
I think it's going everywhere. It's funny, when I want to have these questions answered, I ask my kid, right? But and some things that she says I haven't even heard of yet. So I'm just getting used to TikTok. That's brand new to me. Like I just joined it. So I'm a little behind the game in that way. But no, I think that's great that you're on all these platforms. That's what you have to do, right? I mean, I don't know what kind of, another thing I was talking to a couple of friends of mine is how you monetize on these things. A lot of my friends in radio, and I have a ton of them, they are owned by their companies. So once they go beyond that, their podcasts, et cetera, they literally have to pay the company and not themselves. So the company owns the rights to their podcast or YouTube, just like you're seeing with the writer's strike. It affects radio very much with all of this, right? So they're using their content and then they're benefiting and they're selling ads on their Instagram or their podcast, and they're not getting a cent from it. And they're expected to do a ton of different shows and different markets for no extra money. And that's what's happening in radio, which is sad too.
You're on every morning.
I am.
How do you get content every morning?
We use some services, but mostly I like to always draw from my life. There's always something going on. Like, for instance, I was just told I have 60 days to get out of my condo. So that's been a big predicament, is how do I find this rent in this economy is insane. I moved in here in 2020 and it has gone up like almost half of what I'm paying has gone up. So how do I afford to live as a single mom trying to
60 days you're given to get out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 60 days. And I've been here 3 years. And when I moved here, it was reasonable. And I was coming from Toronto, so it was super reasonable. Now there's a shortage in Kitchener-Waterloo for, finding student housing. As you know, the universities are here. So yes. 3-4 people are staying in 1-bedroom apartments. So it's kind of crazy. So things like that, I'll draw from my real life stuff. My daughter, a couple of weeks ago, I went to pick her up from a sleepover and she was like holding her face. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, no, no. And I move her hand. She's got a nose ring. So I'm like, what? You were just at a sleepover. How'd you get a nose ring? She's like, oh, my friend has a nose ring gun. I'm like, of course the 14-year-old has a nose ring gun.
Nose ring
She's like,
gun.
Mom, I texted to ask you, but you didn't answer. And I said, just because I don't answer doesn't mean a yes. You don't just do that. So it's things like that. So a lot of draw from our real life. And then we'll make it into a question for Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And then we discuss other people's opinions, or if they have teenagers too, which is always tons of stories about that, right?
I
So we
apologize
draw a
to
lot of
say this, given that your daughter just had this done, but I have never found them attractive. Why do people get them done?
I don't know. It's an age thing. They just love them. Now she wants her belly button done. God forbid she's going to start getting tattoos. Although I have some tattoos, but she's got to be
Belly
the right
button, I
age.
can understand, and that's but no, I just don't understand it. Like, why?
Yeah. I was more concerned that she got like a nail put through her nose and there wasn't a proper usage of it, of equipment or sanitization for that matter. So I have to
So,
go with the
that's
flow.
interesting because, given your position, you will end up speaking with not only your daughter, but a lot of different people that are sort of knowledgeable about and involved in what's going on in pop culture.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
changed dramatically during your career, has it not?
Oh my goodness. So when I used to cover these award shows, I would go back, I would get sent down to the Grammys, and then I would sneak into, different rooms, and I would do all this like behind the scenes stuff with my mini disc recorder. There was no recording device. So I didn't have a phone. And I remember one time my boss at the time, it was Rogers. So I think it was Kiss 92. They sent me down, and this weekend cost them a fortune to put me up in a hotel, the LA plane tickets, like, 3 nights hotel in LA, very expensive, etc. So I did all these great interviews. I got, who was it at the time? It was Santana. I got Carlos Santana on the carpet. I got Donny Osmond. I got George. Was it George Michael at the time? It was just all these stars. I was so excited. And I got to the airport, and you can't do any phone calls from there or anything. And I go through the customs or whatever, get to the other side, and then I run to the station because I'm doing the morning show, but it's an overnight flight, and I want to get in and I want to cut my tape, as we used to say, and it's blank. The
Oh
whole
no.
mini disc is blank. These days, you don't have those problems, right? You can take two, take three, you can do it 1,000 times. So back in the day, when you just had a microphone, no photo evidence, of course, either. So you didn't get any photos that like really swear I met Santana. You didn't even have that. So those were the days. So I'm kind of happy for these little recording devices we have now called iPhones.
So if nose rings are a thing today, what was the thing when you started?
When I started, I actually had my belly button pierced when I was in college. So belly button rings. Oh, it comes back around. How about you?
I never got a nose ring, a belly button, or a tattoo, so I'm boring.
No, neither. Oh,
None
you're a
of the
good
above.
boy. You're a good boy.
I was called Richie Cunningham or Alex B. Keaton in school.
You were?
Yeah,
That's great.
no
Oh, your
question.
mom must have been proud of
Not sure, but that's sort of where it was.
that.
Um, Tell me about Mad Dog, because he had quite a crazy reputation.
He did. Well, yeah, I mean, we were so young when we were doing the Kiss morning show. I was 25. So can you imagine all of a sudden I'm this little kid from Barrie, and there's billboards and subway ads and everyone knows you, and there's parties every night, and you just got finally making money for the first time. It was crazy days. And those radio days were so fun. We had great staff. Everyone was super young and eager. So yeah, it was a great ride. We definitely got in some trouble. There was a lot of sleepover at the station on the couch to do the show the next day. Stuff going on back then for sure. But he's doing great. He's with his wife in Montreal. He hosts a morning show there, so he's doing good.
And then The Edge. Tell me what that was, because that was, harder, was it not?
The Edge was harder, and that was difficult because I went in to co-host with Dean Lundell, and we got fired for inappropriate talk, let's say. I don't know if you remember the story. It was like
I
all over
don't.
the place. It was in the Toronto Star and the Sun that we got let go for inappropriate behavior. So that was yeah. I still look back, and we said some things were probably offside, but they might have come off wrong. But Dean was known for doing that. It was called The Edge, and you're supposed to be edgy, right? So I mean, that was the whole point of the show.
Yeah.
So I guess there was one too many complaints, and there we go. We got let go from there. So those were the days.
And then tell me about country.
Country was great. I was brought in. It was a sad time because I was brought in. A dear, wonderful broadcaster named Jennifer Campbell was diagnosed with cancer, and sadly she passed away. So I came in to help out during her time, and unfortunately we lost her, which yeah was really upsetting and a hard time for everyone. She's like icon in this KW market, and for broadcasters worldwide. Everyone just loved her. And so that was a hard time to do that, and for everybody involved. And PJ had been with her for years. And yeah, that was a difficult time for sure. So I did my contract there. I'm not really a country girl. So, and PJ was great, but it just wasn't like sometimes, if the chemistry's not there, or they're thinking they want something else, that's what happens. PJ and I are still friends. There was no blowout there, but I was very honored to step in and help out when they needed it. So,
and now you're Billie and Friends at the Grand.
And Billie and Friends, yeah. So I've got my producer Paulie. So he's great. He's from 570 here in town, and he was there for years, 17 years, and he's just funny and a quirky character, and just such a hard worker. He's just so funny. And Arlene Dowell, who is also at the Talk 570, and she's great too. She's our newscaster, and we all have three very different approaches and personalities, and it just seems to really work. So it's great.
Awesome. Sounds like you're settled in.
I am settled in, except for I have no condo.
And as long as you can find a place to live in 60 days, you're settled in.
That's right.
I also want to talk a little bit about girls empowerment, which I think was one of the things that you were really focused on. But we're going to take a break for some messages and come back with Billie Holliday in just 2 minutes. We're chatting about her career in radio. We're chatting about the changed media landscape. And I want to talk about some of the passions that she's had. And one of them is empowerment for school-aged females. Stay with us, everyone. We're going to be back in just 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. It's a real pleasure of mine to be chatting tonight with Billie Holliday, who is someone who I think I did, and lots of us listen to on a fairly regular basis as we were, for my case, driving into work and other times. She was on KISS 92.5, Mad Dog and the Billie Show. She was also on The Edge. She was also on Country 106.7 in Kitchener, and she's now on the Grand at 101 with something called Billie and Friends. She's also been very involved in TV. You were involved in Degrassi High, Daytime at Rogers, and then something called My Fab Gay Wedding. Tell me a little bit about some of those experiences.
My Fab Gay Wedding was a reality show about the first couple in Canada to get married as a gay couple. So I was their maid of honor. So that was like a reality show, which was super fun to do. And my dogs were the ring bearers for the show. So that was way back in the day, which was pretty fun. I also did a show on Global called Pop Stars, which I was a female judge on, which was like Canadian Idol, but it was before Canadian Idol and before American Idol and all that stuff. So that was pretty fun. We put together a group called Sugar Jones. And so sometimes I'll be driving and I hear their song. I know we play it on my station. So it's kind of a funny thing to think we put together these girls, and what a journey that was, going across Canada and auditioning all these singers and having to tell them no, and all of that, all of that stuff where you trick them and you say, I've got bad news, you're not going home, and all that stuff. So that was quite the journey too. And Degrassi, we were just on one with Drake, which is interesting. So we were, Mad Dog and I were hosting the high school dance, and Drake was dancing. So we were like just DJing and talking to Drake back and forth. So that was really cool too.
And Daytime on Rogers, how long did you do that?
Yeah, I used to fill in for Daytime and guest host and stuff like that, doing that. And Last Call was another one that I did with Roz Weston, which was on Toronto 1, and it was live at 11 p.m. So I was on CHFI at the time. So I was going and waking up at 4, and then doing CHFI morning show, then doing any interviews I had to do in the afternoon, then going down to this little bar at 11 p.m. and doing a live hour TV talk show till midnight, getting to bed around 1, waking up at 4. It was brutal.
I can imagine.
But I was young enough that I could do it. Now, no, could not do it.
So I honestly, other than, a few news shows, can't remember the last time I watched regular, TV channels, CTV, CBC, Global.
What do you need,
I just can't remember.
Right? I'm the same way. So now if the only thing I would watch once in a while on cable, I got rid of my cable 2 years ago, but the only thing I would watch was sports, really. If I wanted to see some score, if I wanted to talk about it on air or whatever. Now you just can go on and watch highlights like right away on your phone. I mean, why do you need it? Or stream the sports station or whatever.
You're right. So, I do watch Hockey Night in Canada. I have to admit, I did that.
You have to admit, yeah. So the only time I watch TV commercials is if I'm at my parents. I'm like, oh my God, I still have a commercial. But they also don't have call waiting yet. Who doesn't have call waiting yet? My parents.
It's
Crazy times. But
incredible how, when I was growing up, it was 2 channels and then 3 channels and black and white and then color. And today
that's
it's like
right.
I was in someone's house the other day. They had something like 5,000 channels on their system. It was like unbelievable.
How do you even pick what to watch? I mean, geez, I saw a meme the other day, which was like, this is a picture of an old school TV remote, and it was a little kid pressing the buttons on that brown and orange box, right? Where your dad would go, just go change the channel, and you just sit there, click, click. Things have changed.
So I understand one of the passions that you had in the community was Go Girls Only.
Yeah.
Tell me
Mm-hmm.
about that.
It was a program I co-started called Girls Only Go, and through the Toronto School District Board, where we'd go and speak to Toronto underprivileged youth, just about anything they wanted to talk about. It was kind of like a big group kind of hug where I'd get girls to write down anonymously like what they were dealing with. And then we'd read them, or I'd read them. I wouldn't say who they were from, and we'd raise hands. Who was feeling this way too? Who else is feeling this way? And I'd share my story of when I was 14 and had a bad accident, and I was paralyzed from the neck down. I had broke my neck, and I was thrown in headfirst in the shallow end of a pool.
Oh, really?
So I skipped grade. Well, I didn't go. Grade 9 was not a great year for me because I had the halo traction and the armor on and
Oh
all
my
of that
God.
stuff. I was
Are
also
you are
put in
you
special.
are you okay today?
I'm okay. Yeah. That's why I'm wearing a turtleneck. No, I'm just kidding. I'm okay today. I've got some issues because of it, but overall, I'm very blessed and thankful. But it took me a while to, get out of that stage. And I was also put in a special education program because I hit my head on the bottom of the pool. And anyway, long story short, I had a tough time in high school. And I just remember that. And then I always remember, believing that I would get to where I wanted to be just as long as I just stayed the course. And so I thought, if I ever get to make it and have a voice, that's something I'd like to do is talk to, people that were my age or kids, girls in particular that are having a rough time and not thinking they could, get there and get to their goal and be the person they wanted to be and, make it. I remember being told I would never be in journalism or broadcasting because of it. I was in special education classes in high school and all that stuff. And that did not wear in my conscious very well, but I just, kept going. And so I wanted to tell my story, and at the time they thought it was cool. So I could, get away and kind of be a role model a bit, hopefully for them.
Well, that's interesting. I never heard that before, and I've always found you to be incredibly articulate. You speak very quickly.
Thank
Where'd
you.
that all come from? Just the gift of the gab, or what?
I guess just because I won't be quiet, I refuse to be silenced. Yeah, I've always been very talkative, that's for sure. But yeah, thank you for that.
And you were in special education classes all through high
I
school.
was, yeah. Yeah, they said I wouldn't learn as quickly. I couldn't. I was exempt from French because I wouldn't be able to learn a second language. All of these things. A big part of it was there was a court case going at the same time where we were in a court case about the accident, and I think the lawyers wanted to show that I had some major problems like life problems, and it's funny because to this day I still get a check, and I call it the neck check for the fact that I would never meet my dreams or my goals. So I would always need help. So I just always just laugh at that check.
Now, I was told that you had an interesting story as a single mom, but you told me that's not true. You don't have an interesting
I
single
don't
mom.
have one interesting. I have 100 interesting stories of being a single mom. It's every day is a new story. I mean, I told you the nose ring story, but yeah, it's a different world. But it's funny. I'm very close with my ex-husband. We're really good friends, but it's hard to kind of, and I noticed this, and going back to me talking a lot, I share like way too much information with her. Like sometimes she's like, "Mom, I'm not your best friend," and I never wanted to like get into that trap, but I find that I'm telling her details where I'm like, "Oh, sorry, probably shouldn't have said that." And she's like, "Oh my God," I'm just oversharing. So I think getting that balance of still being the parent, but you want to be the cool mom too. For instance, we tried to be cool. I was trying to be a cool mom, so I had to go to Barbie yesterday. So I went into my closet. She got to pick any kind of pink outfit she wanted to choose, so we got all glittery, she's wearing sequins, put pink makeup on, did the whole Barbie thing, even though I was like, oh my God. We got to the theater. It took an hour to get ready. And she's like, it was my birthday. So she wanted to bring me.
Happy
So
birthday.
we get there and she's like, oh, it started an hour ago. I'm like, oh my God. Now we're just those girls walking around the mall dressed in pink sequins and bright pink makeup with no purpose.
So you
So
never
we
saw
have
the
a great
movie?
relationship. Yeah. Well, yeah, we couldn't go to the movie. We could have gone to the other. I guess we could have gone to Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer.
Well,
all dressed in pink.
I did the double feature when I went, and then went saw both, just so I could say
Did
that I did
you?
both in one night.
And what
Yeah.
did you think? What did you think of Barbie?
I enjoyed both of them. I'm
Did you?
more of a political, person, and so Oppenheimer I thought was spectacular and really very
Yeah.
interesting, and had a lot of really good questions. But I actually thought that Barbie, I was not looking forward to Barbie. I wasn't expecting great things, and in the end, I
Yeah.
really, really enjoyed it. I thought that stereotypical Barbie was really very interesting. The way that initially you thought she was the stereotypical Barbie that only had her role because of this incredible body that she had and this figure that,
Right.
they said
Yeah.
she would topple over if she was a real person.
Right.
But she ended up being incredibly articulate, incredibly bright, and ambitious, and wanted to, change Barbie Land into a
Well,
more
that's a good
feminist
message.
scenario, and achieve that. It was a really interesting movie. I thought that Weird Barbie, Kate Kate McCrinnon, is that her name from Saturday Night Live?
Kate McKinnon. Yeah.
Kate McKinnon,
SNL. Yeah.
and she was excellent. And
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. And then, frankly, I guess I didn't identify with Ken, but I felt so sad for Ken,
Yeah.
and
Poor
the
Ken
fact
gets
that
ignored all the time. He always used to
unbelievable.
get ignored. Yeah. In my playroom, he was not even looked at. He was just like thrown in there. Never even dressed him. He was just always in there. No shorts, nothing.
So I think it'll actually, I think Oppenheimer will win the Academy Award. I think
Oh,
that
yeah.
Barbie could end up being a really important pop culture development, thing, because it really talks about the patriarchy. It really talks about feminism. It
Hmm.
really talks about, being your own person, and everyone has a
Yeah.
right to be recognized and be authentic, and, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. I really enjoyed it. And I did wear a pink shirt.
Oh, you did? I was going to
I did.
ask.
I
And
did.
it's the first female director to get a box office hit that was over $1 billion.
Yeah.
So good for her,
I thought it was
for
great.
Greta.
So,
Yeah.
Billy, if some teenage girl said her ambition was to become you,
Oh God.
to become a radio host,
Yeah.
what's your advice?
Well, my advice now would be a lot different than how I did it, but because there's so many other tools to do it, right? I would start podcasting as soon as you possibly could. Find a good angle for it, find your character, and find your niche. And also just don't put all your eggs in one basket. Make sure you have other skill sets, whether it's, I have lots of friends that are designers, plus they're podcasters, everyone can have a podcast now, but just to get that on as early as you can and practice. I mean, you've got all the tools right in your hand to be able to practice and become a good communicator. So there's so many tools out there, get your own channel, YouTube, whatever it is, pick your topic, pick whatever you want to focus on, pick your character, pick what you value and what you believe in, and make sure you're heard and make sure you don't divulge from that, and go for it. Just start doing it. Because I think a lot of people just keep putting it off, and you can't these days. I mean, everyone in the world has a podcast, right?
Everyone in the world has a podcast.
Yeah.
So you said pick your character. What do you mean by pick your character?
Pick what you want to be. I mean, just pick who you want to speak to. Be yourself, obviously, but always focus on and accentuate what you want you to come off as, if I could say, what you want. I know there's lots of girls and lots of people I watch on Instagram and TikTok or podcasts that they're actually in a role while doing the interviewing, etc. So you kind of have to have a niche these days a little bit, right? If you're not a traditional broadcaster.
So are you or are you a character?
I am Mimi. I am Mimi. I think maybe when I started out, I was trying to be a character because I was in my 20s and I didn't kind of know, and all of that stuff. But I'm definitely probably too much me now that I should be. Maybe I should take my own advice.
What does your daughter think about being so exposed on radio?
She has moments, but I just like, honey, it pays the bills. You got to expose some of your life. And I make sure I never embarrass her. And I'll always say to her, I'm going to say this. Is that okay? One thing she won't do, she doesn't like a ton of pictures. I have to go through all the pictures and make sure if I'm going to post something that it's okay by her. She also does a bit on our show called Now Billy's Daughter Teaches Us Slang Words. So she comes on and she'll say a slang word. We get her to use it in a sentence. So for instance, gat. Do you know what gat is, Brian?
No.
GAIT. I'm like, well, no. She's like, that girl's got a big booty. She's got a gat. So then we'll get her to use it, like we'll guess what it is and we'll use it in a sentence like, get out of here. And then we'll find out what the word is at the end. and we're always wrong. So we always try to guess what
I am
word.
so out of it. I
Me
interviewed
too.
someone the other day who had, what was it? The blue pill,
Yeah.
Dusty Boy. There are a whole bunch of
What? I
lingos
don't even
that
know these.
I knew nothing about any of these slang words that they're using.
I know. She calls me bra too, which I'm like, not bro, bra, like BRUH. I'm like, okay, all right. So that's a fun bit we do though, once a week on the show. We always learn a new word, so we're cool, but we're
Tell
never.
her I want to interview her. I want to hear some of these slang words. Maybe she could teach me
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. It's way funnier
a
than
ton of
me.
things. What's the future for you?
The future for me, I'm really loving the programming aspect now that I've sort of done, so many morning shows, etc. I like doing, the own show, my own show as well, and we have a really good show going here. Just to kind of expand. I'd really like to. I can't believe I haven't yet. I'm here giving advice, but I want to start a podcast in the near future, and hopefully that'll launch soon. But for now, just focusing on the programming aspect, I find it fascinating. Just writing the imaging, coming up with concepts, and like I like the creative part of it, and I like hiring new talent. I'm hiring a college kid who's doing great, and it's his first show, and he's so excited, and to see that excitement for radio is very exciting for me because I remember how excited I was, and I need that passion alive in radio still, and it's nice to see. And if I can be a part of that and give people an opportunity, it's amazing.
Who's the most interesting person you've interviewed?
Oh, um, so many. I would have to say Eminem
Really?
because at the time he was at the height of his fame, and he was not arrogant. He was super sweet, but it was funny watching him. I was at a Grammy after party with him, and it was funny because he was acting all tough, but then when the cameras went away and the people went away without microphones, he was just the nicest guy in the world. And he took me to a party. We went to a party. Dr. Dre was there, and I thought it was going to be all like cool, but they were like the nicest guys and just like super sweet. So he was really interesting. And at the time, he had a lot of slack going on because he was a very outspoken rapper at the time, and of course he still is. But at that time, it was really popping, as the kids say. But he was probably up there as one of the most interesting for sure.
Was there a most surprising that you didn't expect it to be as good as it was, and it turned out to be really good or really bad?
You know, it's funny. There's so many like Bruno Mars is amazing. He's just so kind. You can always tell, you know, the
I
people.
was in
This is how
Vegas
I say it.
recently and wanted to go see him. It was like
Oh,
$1,200 to go see him. I couldn't believe it.
okay, that's another thing I've got beef with. I mean, the kids these days are not going to be able to see their favorite artists at concerts. I mean, how are you going to ever, when we were kids, we get to go $50, see it, $100, like, whatever. These kids are never going to be able to see their favorite. And that's part of growing up. Like, how much fun was it going to these concerts?
Well, part of the problem is you and I are going and we're buying the tickets and pricing them
Oh,
out of the market. There's no
I
question.
know.
But
I know. I
sorry,
brought my daughter to see Taylor Swift about when last time she was in Toronto. So I guess that was 5 years ago. And it was still expensive, but I was like, you've gone once, that's it for the rest of your life. One time, that's it.
I was there 5 years ago and it was a great concert. Wanted to go
Oh,
again and I put in numerous
reputation. Yeah.
different applications and didn't get one of mine accepted. So I'm still waiting for
Oh, you were on
that
that. I
test.
was on it too. I was like, oh no, the
And then
worst.
looked to try to buy in the aftermarket. And again, they're all like over $1,000. And
That's crazy.
I'm going to see Bruce Springsteen, and I've never seen Bruce Springsteen.
Oh,
And
that would be awesome.
but it's $850 a
Oh,
seat.
wow. That's crazy. Another, going back to interesting people, um, Richard Branson is a great guy. And he launched, Virgin, obviously. So we got to know him super well. And, he taught me a lot about, just the world. And I don't know if you've read his books and stuff, but here, I'll show you one book. Do you have a second?
Yep.
So I've got this book
Fascinating
here.
conversation we're having tonight with Billie Holiday about her career and life.
So this is a book from Richard Branson. This is funny. It was just on my shelf, so I caught it and I thought I should tell the story. So he was in town for a meeting. He's a very busy man, but I was supposed to meet him for dinner, Richard Branson, and I stood Richard Branson up. Can you believe it? I stood.
No.
So he writes here. I know you probably can't see that, but it says, Billy, can you read that?
Yep. Billy, where are you?
Says, where are you? You promised. Love, Richard Branson. Well, I had to fly out all of a sudden to interview Beyonce in New York City. So I stood him up for Beyonce.
I'd
So,
stand up
right?
anyone for Beyonce.
That's right. So I had a good reason, but that's a good story.
You've interviewed some amazing people.
Yeah, I really have. I've been very lucky. Yeah, very lucky. It's one of my favorite things to do, for sure.
Any politicians?
Well, Donald Trump. Oh, well, yes, John Tory, of course. Big politicians don't know. Like, no, I wasn't really into the politics as much. I know you probably do a lot of.
I do a lot of politics.
Well, yeah, I do a lot of politics. I never got into that. I'm more actors like Bradley Cooper. I've interviewed. Who else? Like, yeah, all the actors because they used to come into the station, or I'd fly to them, or whatever. So, yeah, those were good too. Brad Pitt, I've interviewed. Yeah, all the big Angelina Jolie. Yeah.
We have, CRTC that wants to have Canadian content on our radio and TV and cable and stuff like that. You've interviewed people both in Canada and the United States. Is Canadian culture different than the United States? And does it need to be supported?
CRTC, don't get me started with It doesn't. If you're talking about Canadian content, I mean, it does. We've always, as programmers now, when I'm programming music, et cetera, we of course at my station have 40% CanCon, right? That we have to play Canadian music. But these days, I think it's a lot easier because we have so many more international big artists that are from Canada. So I don't know if it's necessarily applies anymore, but I think that there is, a place for it. There's a place for, of course, ensuring that Canadian content gets on, et cetera. Because in the States is, I would not like to be in the States right now. That's for sure.
Why?
I mean, would you?
Why?
Just, I just feel it's just so violent. It's just so violent. I feel like I don't, last time I was in the States, I did not feel safe anymore. And I guess you could say that about any major city, but I just feel like an unsettling feeling now, so divided.
I think that's the biggest issue because if you, are chatting with people, and I do business in the United States and travel to the United States a lot,
yeah.
and inevitably in every conversation, you either it comes up: do you watch CNN or Fox, or did you vote for Trump or someone else? And it is incredibly divided. And I worry that Canada is going a little bit that way, but the United States it's like two solitudes. Some of them are along the coast, and then everyone else that's in the middle. But
right.
Even on the coast, you'll find some that are Trump supporters, and in the middle, you'll find very few Democrats. But it's two different media that they're watching, and they're getting two very different stories, and they have two completely different truths. They really do. There's two completely
They do have two different truths. It's wild, and they also are allowed to carry guns, which is really frightening to me.
And they love them. Love them. Billie Holliday, thank you so much for joining us tonight and chatting a little bit about your career. And it's such a pleasure of mine to finally meet you face to face.
Yes, drop in anytime. I'd love to talk to you.
Well, we don't know where you're going to be because in 60 days you might be out on.
That's right. I might be out in the street with the laptop.
That's our show for tonight. Everybody, thanks so much for joining. Thanks for getting to know Billie Holliday. I remind everybody I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960M. You can stream me online at www.saga960m.ca, even from Kitchener-Waterloo. All my podcasts and videos are available on briancrombie.com. My podcasts are on Apple, Audible, SoundCloud, Speakeasy, and my videos are on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great night. Billie Holliday, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.